from Mishlei, פרק כ"א, פסוק א', י' דברי תורה לעילוי נשמת אלעזר בן חכם שמעון, Na'adir ben Abdullah. The first pasuk of the perek is a very important pasuk that we come across quite often. Palge maim lev melech biyad avomai al kol asher yachpotz yatenu. A king's heart, he translates over here, is like rivulets of water in Hashem's hands. Wherever he wishes, he turns it. In other words, when one wants to irrigate his field, he can channel the water in a certain way to go various, he calls it rivulets or streams. That water is coming from where? What's the source? There's a human being behind it that's channeling, that's directing the waters to go where he wants them to go. In the same way is the heart of a king. Ordinarily, every human being has free will. That is a very important principle in Judaism, that we pretty much can determine certain aspects of our faith. And I emphasize certain aspects because not everything is in our control, in our hands. But if one is going to become a tzaddik or rasha, perform a mitzvah or an avirah, that is up to us. We have free will. However, when an individual Oleh ligdula, when he rises in position and he takes over the reign of a kingdom, which means that he has control over the masses, over many people, which means that he can determine who will live and who will die, to give so much control to one human being is not exactly so. In other words, it appears so, but it's not exactly so. There's someone behind the scenes. That someone is, of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that will determine in the end what he will allow this king to carry out, or what he will actually put in his mind. In other words, there are two aspects of here. There's an idea where Hashem can actually put into the mind of the king what to do or what not to do, or he can allow or not allow somebody like Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini to carry out what they want to do. If Hashem would just let them do whatever they want, we would have had already a nuclear war. Khrushchev would have, not only banged his shoe on the podium, he would have done worse things. But Hashem controls all the fanatics and does not allow them to do anything that is destructive, anything that goes against his wishes. Hashem has a master plan for the world. And if somebody is about to do something that goes against his wishes, he won't allow it to happen. He removes the free will. It's interesting that we're talking about this because now we're reading about Paro. Hashem hardens his heart. In a way, he does take away his free will. Taking away the free will of Paro is partly the punishment that is due to him. But Hashem does not exactly take away his free will. It just makes it harder for him to be impressed by the miracles. And when one is not so impressed by the miracles, he says, or he concludes, probably by chance that the Red Sea split. It must have been low tide. You can easily reason and assume that what is happening is nature freaking out and not an act of God. So in a way, of course, Hashem is hardening his heart to believe in a certain way. And why does Hashem do so? So in order that he could bring about all the plagues, all the makot, and impress Am Yisrael that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in control, in charge of everything. So that is the idea over here, a very important idea, that Lev Melech, the heart of a king, is no longer his heart, it's in the hand of Hashem. However he wants to direct it, he does so. Just like the waters. And because this is so, when we are in trouble, when we have a prime minister or a president or a king who is enacting a decree that we're very much against, instead of mustering all our efforts in trying to convince the king that he should annul his decree, change his mind, the commentaries say we're better off just redirecting our efforts to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because any gezerah that comes down over here through a human king has already been decreed b'shamayim. In other words, if it's not decreed, then one way or another it's going to be annulled. Of course, we have to oppose. One has to oppose that which is not right, that which is not according to the Torah. One has to show that he's against. But we have to remember that the real work is it needs to be directed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our prayers, supplications, to beg Hashem's mercy. That is exactly what the Jews did in Shushan HaBirah. There was no way to convince Ahashverosh. Haman was in charge. To convince Haman, forget it. So they went to the right address. They fasted for 3 days, as Esther said. That was the right thing to do, and that is something for us to learn for the future. And of course, there have been many times that Jewish communities were facing danger. That's what they did. That is what Am Yisrael does when nothing else helps, when everything else fails. You try to bribe the authorities, you try to do whatever you can. In those situations where you can bribe them, where that will work. That doesn't always work. But in the end, we have to remember that if something is disturbing, if something is menacing and threatening the Jewish nation, then it is time for us to turn and see what we have to correct, what we have to change, and go about it by doing the teshuvah and asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to overturn the decree. Very important point, and this is really very important because many people have made mistakes in thinking that this prime minister is no good and that prime minister will be better, that we should vote over him, we should elect him. It has nothing to do. This pasuk is telling us a very important point, that all kings and all presidents and all prime ministers, to an extent, are puppets. They are puppets in the hand of Hashem. It does not mean that they don't have free will. Pharaoh still had free will. They all have free will to an extent. But because of their position, because of the amount of power that they have, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not allow them free movement in doing whatever they want. On the contrary, HaKadosh Baruch Hu in some ways guides them to whatever He wants. They will still be culpable, they will still be guilty of carrying out those atrocities and all the terrible things that they may have done against the wishes of Hashem. But if something happens, you should know Hashem allowed it to happen. It does not mean that Hashem likes it. It does not mean that Hashem actually approves of it, but He allows it to happen. There's a big difference. You think Hashem likes the Holocaust? Of course not. But He allowed it. If He would have been against His wishes, He would not have allowed it. You think what happened in Gush Katif is good? It may be good. We will see. We will have to wait and see what was good about it. In the meantime, it's no good. Because the fact that Jews are being uprooted, removed, and all of this desecration of Hashem's name, it's no good. But the fact that Hashem allowed it to happen means that He wanted it, in some ways, to take place. So all the politicians who are in power, who did what they did, may have done something wrong, may have done something bad, but instead of opposing them, we should have turned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and asked Him, annul this decree. All the efforts of Am Yisrael should really be to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because He's the source of everything. If an enemy is threatening us, there's something wrong with us, not something wrong with the enemy. It's the same idea. A king is limited to what he can do on his own. Hashem will not allow him to do it if he goes against his wishes. So instead of trying to fight the king, trying to fight the decree, we have to go to the source, and that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The next pasuk, Kol derech ish yashar be'einav v'tochen libot Adonai. Man's every way is straight in his own eyes, but Hashem counts the hearts. Alright, it's not necessarily counting the hearts. I'll say it in my words. We've seen this idea before, that human beings have a hard time seeing their own faults. Rabbis tell us, Adam karov le'atzmo. A person is biased to himself. He doesn't see his own faults. Therefore, every man's way is straight in his own eyes. But Hashem knows our thoughts. Hashem knows what's going on in our hearts. Whether we are sincere or not, whether we're honest or not. That is one meaning of this pasuk. Similar idea to what we've seen before, that a person should be careful, therefore, because he's biased, that perhaps he should seek somebody to direct him, somebody to advise him if he's wrong or right in what he's about to do, because Kol derech ish yashar be'einav. Man thinks he's right. V'tochen libot Hashem, Hashem really knows the truth. The other idea of tochen libot Hashem is as follows. Rabbis tell us, Kol haba litaher misayin oto min hashamayim. Anybody who seeks the truth, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help him. Tochen libot over here therefore means that Hashem will help him fix his heart. Those who want to seek the truth, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will awaken them, will implant in their heart to meet the right people, to seek the right people, and at some point, of course, they will be able to achieve that which they wanted to achieve, and that is to correct their faults or correct whatever it is that they need to correct. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps those who want to help themselves. And since He knows what's going on in our hearts and thoughts, He guides us and He awakens us. Performing charity and justice is preferred to Hashem than sacrifices. Well, that's very interesting. I mean, isn't it obvious? It's not so obvious, because there's a big emphasis in Christianity, lehavdil, on blood and sacrifices. They claim and they tell the Jews, what are you going to do today that you don't have sacrifices? You need blood. You see, God needs blood. And they point to various verses where blood is necessary, where sacrifices are necessary. Sacrifices were so important. How are you going to atone for your sins without korbanot? So you have to be prepared to show them there are many, many pesukim all over Tanakh that show just the opposite. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not care for sacrifices. On the contrary, He cares for prayer. He cares for charity. Asot tzedakah mishpat nivchar. Here's one pasuk. He prefers tzedakah mishpat than all the sacrifices in the world. And as the rabbis tell us in the Gemara, gadol ha'oseh tzedakah yoter me'akorbanot. Greater is one who does tzedakah more than all the korbanot. Korbanot was only something bedi'avad. Somebody committed a sin. At the time that korbanot were permissible, he brought a sacrifice, and the sacrifice was purely symbolic. You committed an animal act. You were negligent. Be careful next time. It's going to cost you. This is whatever the animal cost. Look at it. What's happening to the animal really should be happening to you. Right? A lot of symbolism in sacrifices. But does Hashem need a sacrifice? Does He need it to slaughter it and burn it? What does He get from it? Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be remorseful, to realize what we've done wrong, and to correct our deeds. So asot tzedakah mishpat. Hashem wants us to behave ourselves, to do the right thing. Tzedakah could be either the right thing, to be just, mishpat, to do the right thing. That is obviously, it would be better if we would never make a mistake than have to make the mistake and bring the korban. Hashem does not need the korbanot. That's a simple understanding of this pasuk, that Hashem would prefer that we put a big emphasis on mitzvot ben adam lechavero than have to relate to him later and ask forgiveness, which is ben adam lamakom. In other words, ben adam lechavero, do tzedakah and do mishpat is more significant. And that is something that you can always do. Not only can we do that today there's no korbanot, that's the only thing we can do. So according to the Kabbalah, basically what Shlomo Melech perhaps over here is also insinuating, that this is their only tikkun that we have today. Since we don't have to korbanot today, you want to fast. There are a certain amount of fast that one can take upon himself for certain sins. But as the Ariya Kadosh and the Kabbalah say, we're weak. Our generation is weak. And instead of committing ourselves to fast 200 and some fasts for certain sins, do charity and redeem those fasts with a certain amount of tzedakah. And mishpat, and correct your ways. In other words, don't repeat the mistakes. That is the right attitude. That is the correct thing to do. And that is much better than all the korbanot that one may bring. Next pasuk, rum einayim urchav lev nir reshaim chatat, haughty eyes or arrogant eyes, and unlimited lust. The tillage of the wicked is sin. Basically what he's saying is that arrogance and those who pursue ta'avot, the desires, that is nir reshaim chatat, that is the way of life of the reshaim. That is the emphasis in their life. That is a goal for Reshaim. There are certain people that have ta'avot, certain desires. They want to have certain things in life. But if you see an individual whose whole life, his entire ambition, all his goals have to do with gava and ta'avot, arrogance and desires, personal desires, and the lust, that is the lifestyle of a Rasha. That is where he puts his emphasis. Where a Jew does not put an emphasis, of course, on these things. Why does he tell us that? Because if somebody, of course, is overemphasizing certain things, you have to tell him to be careful. Because one thing leads to another. And one is never satisfied, especially when it comes to money. The more money you have, the more money you want. So ta'avot, there's different kinds of ta'avot, there's different kinds of desires. I don't think there's a need for me to list all the desires. I think you're well aware that there's all kinds of desires. And one who pursues that, nir reshaim chatat, that is the lifestyle, or that is the emphasis Nir is the furrow of the field, where you till the field. In other words, that is his way. That is where he walks. That is what he pursues. Next pasuk. Machshavot charutz ach lemutar v'chol atz ach lemachsor. The plans of a diligent man lead only to advantage, or to gain, whereas anybody who's hasty hurries only to want. What that means is as follows. Machshavot charutz, plans of a diligent man will bring him gain, because a diligent man thinks about what he's about to do. He doesn't hurry. And there are some individuals that just hurry to make a quick buck. In the end, those who are diligent, who think very well about what they're about to do, they will gain. They will prevail. V'chol atz, those who hurry, lemachsor, they will lose. They will be lacking. The rabbis tell us in different words that kol adocheket hasha'a dochakto. There are some individuals who insist on making a lot of money. They go to Las Vegas, they lose $100. They say, okay, I'm going to put another 100, another 100. You are seeing that you're losing. Then why are you pushing it? That's called in Hebrew docheket hasha'a. You see that the hour, the sha'a, is against you. You have no mazal. Then why push it? Why insist? Now, if you're making it, you made a lot of money, you also have to know when to stop. Because if you don't stop at some point, I think everybody runs out of luck at some point. If not, you're going to lose everything. So you have to be smart. You have to know when to stop. But what did we just say before? The ones who have ta'avot, they continue and continue. A lot of people have told me, Rabbi, I'm only going to bet $18. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop after the first $100. I have heard other people who invested $1,500, $2,000. They lost it, but then they won it back, and then they stopped. Well, lucky them that they were able to win it back. I'd like to make a comment about that. You're not allowed to bet. It's not a Jewish tradition, and anybody who does this regularly for a living is disqualified from being a kosher witness. In other words, there are certain things that disqualify a Jew from being a kosher witness. That is one. Whoever makes this a habit makes a living out of it. Misachek b'kuvya. So you don't want to do this regularly. And even at home, to play poker and to do all these things, these are non-Jewish traditions. It's not a good thing for one to be occupied with non-Jewish games, especially when it involves money and betting, and there's a lot of halachic problems with betting, especially if you lose the money. So here he says, one who is diligent, achle motar, in other words, he will have left over, he will gain. He thinks about what he does, he doesn't rush into it. And usually a person who is diligent is also honest and straight. So he will gain, lemotar. V'chol atz, whoever rushes into anything, lemachsor, he will lose. So he's also telling us about rushing into anything is no good. Take your time, deliberate about it, think about it, and then don't rush into it. But especially the one who is losing, as we just pointed out, who sees that the mazal is not in his favor, don't be stubborn. Don't insist on continuing. Don't push too hard. Give up a little bit. Give in. Rabbis tell us that when a fox is ruling, a fox, sgidle, bow down to him. You may not like somebody. He's a fox. But if he's in charge, you have a choice. You're going to fight him, you're going to lose. He's the one that's in charge. Sgidle, give in. Don't push too hard. Maybe your turn will come at another time. Someone sees that he's not doing very well, perhaps you should think about moving to another place, but not to push too hard, not to insist. A lot of people have tried insisting in getting a particular job. They were told, they had many remazim and many signs from heaven, many signs that this was not it. And they insisted, and eventually, of course, not only were they disappointed, they lost out big time. Had they understood right away that this is not for them, the smallest hint, they should leave. Don't push your luck too hard. Next pasuk, Po'al otzarot bilshon shaker hevel nidaf mevakshe mavet. Gathering treasures with a lying tongue is like a driven vapor. Okay. They seek death. What he's trying to say here is anybody who has made his money bilshon shaker, lying, in other words, in a dishonest way, it's like hevel nidaf, like vapor. In other words, it will disappear. There's no blessing to it. Mevakshe mavet. And those who regularly do this who are crooked, they're also seeking death. Because people who are crooked, eventually those who have been cheated will stand up against them if they find out. So you have to be careful. As the rabbis tell us, Sof ganav litliyah. In the end, the thief will be caught. He may get away with it once, twice, 3 times, but in the end, Sof ganav litliyah, he will be hanged. So those who make their money in a dishonest way, with a lying tongue, as he says, it's like driven vapor. It will disappear. Mevakshei mavet, and they will get themselves into trouble. Shod rashaim yegorem ki mi'anu lasot mishpat. The plunder of the wicked frightens them, for they have refused to perform justice. Shod rashaim is really a continuation to the previous pasuk. The plunder of the wicked frightens them, or breaks them. Because they have plundered, because they have stolen from others, they are concerned. They're always hiding. They're always afraid that they may be caught. So it breaks them. Like we said before, eventually they will be caught. Ki mi'anu lasot mishpat, because they have refused to perform justice. What does that have to do with anything? So the commentaries explain, we're talking about an individual who knows himself that he's wrong, that he has taken money not properly, but he refuses to go to Beit Din. He refuses to solve the matter in the Beit Din. Beit Din calls him, come, take care of the matter, resolve the matter, let's clarify the situation, let's see who's right and who's wrong. And he refuses. He refuses because he knows that he's going to lose. Ki me'anu la'asot mishpat, that's what it means, they refuse to do mishpat. You have a problem, you settle the problem. And there's all sorts of ways to settle a problem. And we're not talking about a court, the court of law, in the non-Jewish court, we're talking about a Beit Din. So Shod Rashaim Yigorem, in the end it will break them. In other words, not only will they be concerned, the simple understanding is that they're concerned that something will happen to them, that they will be caught, but it will break them. What does it mean it will break them? Those who steal from others, in the end, there will be someone that will steal from them. That's what the commentaries say. Whatever you've done to someone else, it will be done to you. We'll talk a little about that a little bit later. What's midah keneged midah? Those who steal, somebody will come and steal from them. Those who cheat others, somebody will come and cheat them. That is one of the ideas here behind the word yigorem. Not only are they afraid and concerned, but in fact something will break them. Next pasuk is very interesting. Hafachpach derech ish vazar vezach yashar pa'olo. A man's way is changeable and he is strange, but as for a pure one, his deed is right. What does it mean? A man's way is changeable and he is strange. There are people who are not consistent. There are people who change their minds regularly. There are people who are moody. All of this is called hafachpach. They're very changeable. And because of that, they cannot hold on to any friend. Because all their friends have to adopt. They have to adapt to this changeable attitude, the changeable personality. And it's very difficult to keep up with people who are not consistent, not predictable, moody. That is one explanation of what the word hafachpach is. Changeable, not consistent. There are people who by nature are not consistent. There are those who are very consistent. And guess what? These two cannot get along. Very hard for somebody who's predictable and consistent and steady and firm to get along with somebody that's just the opposite. Volatile, right? Changeable, moody. And that's just that's just the way certain people are. Now why does he tell us to us? There's something else over here about afachpach derech ish vazar. People are strange. Not only are they changeable, they are also in some ways hypocritical. When it comes to their faults, they don't see it. But when it comes to the same faults that they have, but somebody else has it, they point them out. That is why the rabbis are careful to tell us, Mum shebecha, al tomar lechavercha. If you have some problem, don't point out that problem to someone else if you have the same problem. Because first of all, you're not going to be effective. What are you going to rebuke? What are you going to say to him? If you have the same problem, he's going to tell you, Kshot atzmecha, lifnei shata mekashet acherim. He's going to tell you, take care of yourself first before you tell others what to do. Anybody that has a particular problem, somebody is lazy, cannot tell somebody else, don't be lazy. Right? So, but that's what he says, people are strange. Hafachpach, he says people are funny, they're strange, that they are not only changeable, but they are not consistent, and not completely right in the way they do things or say things. In one way they don't admit their own faults, they don't see their faults, and here they point out the faults of others. So whoever has a particular fault, it's going to be very difficult for him to point it out to someone else. It's not fair, it's not right, plus it's not going to be effective. V'zach yashar pa'olo. But someone who is pure, his deed is right. What does that mean? His deed is right? In other words, because of his good midot, because of his good characters, that because he's right, he's upright. Rabbis tell us that the midot of one's character, leads one in one's life. It will lead him to success or to failure. As the rabbis tell us in different words, ma'asecha yikarvucha u'ma'asecha yerachakucha. It is your deeds that will allow you to befriend people, and it will be because your deeds alone that will cause you to become distant from people. People will not like you. Ma'asecha yikarvucha, ma'asecha yerachakucha. Depending on what you do, it is your deeds that can cause people to befriend you, to like you, or it could be your deeds that will have caused someone to break the friendship, stay away from you, not do business with you. It's your own fault. What does that all come from? What maasim are we talking about? Maasim that stem from the midot, from one's character, from one's personality. So he says over here, V'zach yashar pa'olo, but somebody who's pure, his deed is right. In other words, he will accomplish. He will get things done. He will be successful. Next one is a very familiar idea that we've talked about in the past. It's a little bit funny, but it's also sad. Tov lashevet al pinat gag me'eshet midyanim u'bet haver. It is better to sit on the corner of a roof than to be stuck with a quarrelsome wife in the house of a friend. In other words, if one is stuck, with such an individual in the home, even though it's a bet haver, in other words, even though there's a lot of friends and there's a lot of people in the house, it's not a very pleasant feeling. So what does he say over here? It's better to sit by yourself, al pinat gag, even on the corner of a roof, by yourself. What is he trying to teach us over here? There's a famous saying in many languages, you're better off alone than being in bad company. In various languages, I'm sure you've heard, better off alone than to be in bad company. So, that does not only apply to friendship, but also to a marriage. What could you do if you're stuck? It's very difficult. Rabbis tell us, what should a person do if he's stuck with a bad woman? Yigarshena, he should divorce her. It's a mitzvah, it's one of the mitzvot in the Torah. Even though we treat divorce as a last resort, and it's always a last resort, but that's especially if there are children involved, small children, who are going to suffer. Rabbis tell us if the cure is to divorce, then why doesn't everybody divorce? Because the ketuvah may be very, very high. Maybe he promised her $1 million, in the ketuvah. Or there might be small children. So it's not always easy to divorce. There are people who are stuck. Anyway, if you know somebody like that, you should be pitiful of him. You should. He needs good company. Otherwise, he has to stay by himself on the corner of a roof. He says over here. Tov lashevet al pinat gag. But the idea is the same. Not only with a quarrelsome wife, it's also with bad company. You don't want to be around bad company. You're better off being by yourself. Next pasuk. Nefesh rasha ivetara lo yuchan be'enav re'ehu. The soul of a wicked man desires evil. His neighbor finds no favor in his eyes. Nefesh rasha, we've seen this several times. A true rasha desires evil. That's all he thinks about. That's all he wants. Because he's selfish. He's so selfish. Ivetara means that he desires. In other words, he's only thinking about himself. He's so bad that lo yuchan be'enav re'ehu. Even if his friend, not a stranger, is in trouble, he won't help him out. Lo yuchan be'enav re'ehu. He will not help out. Even his friend will not find favor in his eyes. And this is true not only of friends, it's also true of nations. Talking about Iran, about the threat, and he said, we will always defend Israel. We will always come out and fight for her if necessary. Don't believe it. It doesn't mean anything whatsoever. And I don't think it will ever be that. First of all, we rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not on anybody else. There are, of course, times that some nations are friendly to us, but the bottom line is they have interests. It's not friendship. So here he says the same thing. Unless there's some interest for him to gain from this friend, lo yuchan be'enav re'ehu, this is his own friend. If this is a wicked man, a rasha, he will not find favor in his eyes. He wouldn't care about him, even though he's in trouble. He's in trouble, he needs your help. It won't help him. And we've spoken about this idea in the past, how many individuals out there promise that they will help, that they're kind, and they never come out and help you when you really need them. Those are not friends. You can't count on them. And you know what? The majority of the world is like that. So when you learn Mishlei, it tells you the reality of life, how you can't trust too much, that you can't believe it, what everybody says. Unfortunately, it's like that. But there are some good people. There are some good people. Next pasuk, Ba'anosh letz yachkam peti uve'askil lechacham yikach da'at. When a scorner is punished, a fool gains wisdom, but when a wise man is instructed, he gains knowledge. Here he's talking about pain and suffering. There are some people who get punished, who get whacked, I prefer to use, over their head, and there's some that don't need to get whacked. We've seen this also before. Basically, he's talking about the two types of musar that Hashem gives in this world. There's a musar gufani and a musar sikhli. Musar sikhli is a rebuke with the mind. Hashem sends a message to an individual that something that what you're doing is wrong. He sends him a sign, not a punishment, no pain, no disease. And he gets the message, and he does what he does to fix whatever it is that he did wrong. But there are some individuals who a musar sikhli, an intellectual rebuke, a musar, a drasha, a speech, will not make a difference to them. They will listen, they will not be able to analyze their situation, they won't pay attention to what is happening in their surroundings, around them. It won't affect them, a plain musar sikhli. So what do they need? A musar gufani, a physical musar. Hashem has to actually whack them, give them a slap, to awaken them. So he says over here, when a clown or a scorner, ba'anosh letz, is punished, that's when yachkam peti, that's when the fool gains wisdom. The fool, meaning the one who's not so smart, that's the only language he understands. So when he sees that, he finally wakes up. But one who's really bal sechil, behaskil lachacham, yikach da'at, he understands without that. He understands with sechil, with the mind. You can explain it to him. And there are commentaries explain over here that this is also talking about somebody who made a mistake. A chacham that made a mistake, if you point out the mistake to him, he will make sure he writes it down, that he doesn't forget it, because he realized he made a mistake, and that he feels terrible about making a mistake. But some people don't feel so bad if they made a mistake. So they need to get whacked over their head. So that's what he says over here. A chacham understands he made a mistake, he writes it down. After all, we're all human, no one's perfect, and he understands it can happen, and he's grateful for that. And that's enough for him to take action to correct whatever it is that he needs to correct. But a petty or a letz doesn't understand. So sometimes you need a tougher language, and that's called ba'anosh letz. When he suffers, when he gets over his head, then yahkam peti, he will be able to figure it out. Next pasuk, maskil tzadik lebet rasha mesalef reshaim lara. The righteous one considers the house of the wicked, overthrowing the wicked to their ruin. It's a little bit difficult to understand. What the commentaries say over here is that it's talking about a Kadosh Baruch Hu, or even a tzaddik. Tzaddik meaning either the righteous one, a Kadosh Baruch Hu, or just any tzaddik. They are able to understand when something happens to the house of a rasha, or what is about to happen to the house of a rasha, that mesalef reshaim lara, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is overthrowing the wicked, or leading them to their ruin. This is somewhat similar to the concept of tzaddik v'ralo rasha v'tovlo. When you see a tzaddik, or actually a rasha, who's prospering, you may wonder why. Just pay close attention. Hashem is leading him to his ruin. Hashem is paying him off for anything good that he may have done in his life, in this world. Once upon a time when he was 24 years old, he may have done somebody a big favor. Yeah, could be. And just for that one big favor, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is paying him off. This is a rasha. So maskil tzaddik lebet rasha. A tzaddik is able, if you interpret this as being a regular tzaddik, a tzaddik is able to interpret what is happening to the house of the rasha, what is going on. And what is going on? Mesalef reshaim lara. Hashem is guiding them to their ruin. Or maskil tzaddik lebet rasha, talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the end, he plans it all out. Nothing happens by chance. Nothing is random. Everything is mechuvan. Everything is directed. And in the case of a rasha who has no tikkun, why does he talk about a rasha now after he talked about a petty? Because a petty, what did we say with the petty? He learned a lesson. He got hit over the head. A rasha doesn't learn, doesn't want to learn, doesn't understand, doesn't realize that this is all to awaken him. So he's worse than a petty because he's a rasha. He's still stubborn. He still thinks he's right. So in the end, Hashem lets him. He will guide him to his ruin. Next pasuk, very important pasuk, very applicable, very relevant. Otem ozno miza'akat dal gam hu yikra velo yaneh. Anyone who stops his ear from the cry of a poor man, he too will cry out and not be answered. Midah keneged midah, measure for measure, is a very important principle in Judaism. That is the way Hashem does business in this world. Measure for measure. There is a great sensitivity in the relationship we have with the poor, with the orphans, and with the widows. In the Torah, it is mentioned several times how we have to be extra careful with them. We have to be always careful with helping those in need. But those who have no husband, who have no father, Hashem is their husband, Hashem is their father, Hashem is their judge, and therefore He listens. If they cry, He listens, and whoever hurts their feelings, who hurts them physically, oy vavoilo, he's in big trouble, because it may not take too long until Hashem will carry out judgment against him. Not wait a year or two, but maybe almost immediately. And that is the point that he's bringing out over here. When there's a za'akat dal, when the poor man cries out, Hashem listens. Otemos know, therefore, whoever shuts his ear from listening to the cry of the poor man, what will his punishment be? Besides olam haba, besides what is getting in this world, gam hu yikra velo yaneh, there will come a time when he will have to call out and nobody will come to help him. Measure for measure. We know this. We know that this is important. But sometimes we find it hard to listen to the cries of the poor, perhaps because we've already helped out so many poor. Perhaps we've already helped him out. Commentators explain, even if you've already helped him out, be very careful not to be completely indifferent. Don't refuse. You don't want to give $10, give $1. You don't want to give $1, give a quarter. Be very careful not to refuse completely, for various reasons. If you refuse once, it becomes easier to refuse the second time. You don't want to get your hands used to refusing. But the Torah wants us to get into the habit of giving and giving and giving. So if you refuse, it becomes easy to refuse. And besides the point that he may really need the money. And if you can help him, what's the big deal? So what if you helped him yesterday? Try to help as much as you can, because maybe he really needs it. Most people who stick out their hand really need it. You know how embarrassing it is? I know some people have gotten used to it, and they don't mind asking and begging. But the majority of people don't like it. Most who open up their hand, they probably need the money. Now, some want the money because they want to drink some whiskey or want to have some drugs. Now, if you know that, obviously you don't want to help them. You don't want to help somebody with their bad habit. But if we don't suspect that, then we should help them, even if we've helped them in the past. Now, what happens if you have no money? That's what the emphasis of this pasuk is. There's an additional emphasis in this pasuk. It's not necessarily money. Otemos no miza'akat dal. You don't have to give him money. If you don't have money, why don't you just listen to him? Listen to his story. Sit down with him for 10, 15 minutes. You know how much you will help him? I've seen this in real life. I was able to help the man much more by talking to him and listening to him than giving. How much did I give him already? A few dollars, $18, $26, $36? He needs thousands of dollars. But the fact that you sat down with him, perhaps gave him a drink, listened to his story, and reassured him, you know how much that took away from his pain, from his suffering, from his distress. Much more and much greater tzedakah with the words, with the time that you give the poor man than the money that you may have given him. And Chaz v'shalom, whoever gives the guy money and yells at him, next time why don't you find yourself a job? You would have been better off not to give him a penny and not talk that way. Because you ruin it. And these people are very, very sensitive. And that is why he's putting an emphasis on this, is being careful from za'akat dal, from a poor man, from his cry. In Chaz v'shalom, whoever is unsensitive, gam hu yikra v'lo yaneh chaz v'shalom. It may happen to him too, that when he calls out, people will not listen to him. And he's wondering why people are not helping him. Well, he has to look back in time. Perhaps This is something that he did to others. Okay, just a couple more pesukim here. Next pasuk, also a very, very important, very powerful pasuk. Matan baseter yichpe af v'shochad b'chek chema azah. A gift in secret will appease wrath. Simple English, anybody who gives tzedakah quietly, privately, that has the power of appeasing the wrath. Wrath means anger, b'shamayim, against him. And the second part of the pasuk is similar. V'shochad b'chek chema azah. Here, shochad doesn't mean bribery in the way we understand bribery. Here it means in a bribe in the pocket of the poor man will also appease strong wrath. Chema azah. What is chema azah? What is bichlal af? Charon af. There are various terms used to describe Hashem's relationship with us. Hashem is not human in any way, but in order for us to understand His relationship with us, the Torah uses these terms. Wrath, you know what wrath is? It's more than anger. In the second part, the second word, strong wrath, who knows what that is? Yes? Right. I'm going to talk about that, right? That's what we're going to talk about now. There are various levels in tzedakah. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch and Hilchot Tzedakah, you will find various levels in tzedakah. There's a very important level of giving tzedakah without the poor man knowing who gave him the money. He doesn't feel ashamed. He doesn't know who gave it to him. There's a very high level of tzedakah when one gives and he does not know who the recipient was. He knows it went to a good man. He doesn't know because like this he's not proud. I helped this guy over there. There's a very high level of tzedakah when the man who gives does not know, when the poor man who receives does not know. When they both don't know, that's even better. That is the highest form. One of the highest forms of tzedakah is matan baseter, when no one knows of the other. The Chachamim in the past were always careful to perform at least a part of their tzedakah baseter. Why? Because matan baseter yichpe'ah, because of this pasuk. This pasuk says that this type of tzedakah has the power levatel gezerot, to annul decrees against an individual. Chaz v'shalom, to prevent a decree is easier than to annul one. Just like to prevent a disease is easier than to get rid of the disease once you have it. Eat well, sleep well, diet and exercise, and hopefully you'll be okay. Once you are overweight, once you have a problem, to get rid of it, it's difficult. Same thing with the decree. Once the decree has come out, it's very difficult to annul it. Matan baseter yichpe af. Matan baseter is capable of annulling decrees against one. Af, the wrath of Hashem against him. Tzedakah as it is a very powerful mitzvah. But this type of tzedakah is even more powerful. However, there are times when you also want to give publicly. Why? Because if you give publicly for an important cause that they're making an appeal for, let's say in a shul, then you may encourage others to give too. Oh, if he gave so much, I'm going to give too. If he supports this, then I will support it too. If it means a lot to him, then it should mean a lot to us too. That is why you have to judge the situation. We're not talking about a shul where somebody's going to say, well, I'm going to give matan baseter. No. Then they're actually going to suspect that you want to give $1 or $2. You want to be cheap. That's why you want to give matan baseter. You should be an example and show everybody that you also take part. Because if a person is not an example, they might think he actually does not care about the cause. And there was a story that I've told in the past about an individual who his entire life people thought that he was stingy, that he was a miser. And in the end, when he died, all the poor people in town, when they went to the baker and the butcher to collect their food that used to get for free every Friday, they stopped giving. The butcher and the baker stopped giving food after this guy died, and they eventually realized that all these years, who was paying the bakers and the butchers? This guy who had the reputation of being a miser. And the rabbi felt bad because they buried him together with the lowlifes, in the cemetery. He had to. The teshuvah that the rabbi had to do was to live a tzava'ah, a testament that he should be buried next to him when he passes away. That was his only tikkun. Otherwise, they embarrassed the guy. They didn't even want to bury him, give him a normal burial because of the way he acted. But all his life he was doing matan baseter. You see so was it good? No, it wasn't so good. It was good. It was very powerful. But you have to be careful. You can't do everything baseter, otherwise this is the kind of reputation you get. People will think all sorts of things about you. So you have to use your judgment as to when to do baseter. It's definitely the right thing to do. That a great deal of tzedakah one should try to do baseter. Like this, he doesn't take credit for it. It's more powerful. You save the dignity. You spare the dignity of the poor man. And as the Shulchan Aruch goes on to explain, and if you find this poor man a job and you put him on his feet, then you've even done a greater chesed to the man, because then he's not taking tzedakah. You've lent him the money. That's also even greater than tzedakah, because he's going to return. He didn't take a favor. He didn't take nothing for free. So various levels in tzedakah. And of course, one has to be careful not to take credit for it, not to be part of it. That ultimately what he's doing is a mitzvah. He's doing a chesed, and if at all, if you can spare the dignity of the poor man, then the level of tzedakah is much greater. Yes, one should do chesed and be charitable with goyim, only because we want to be in peaceful terms with them. We want to have a good name, we want to have a good reputation, we want to coexist with them, but not that there is an obligation for us to do, but it's a good thing to do. Yeah. It can be a Kiddush Hashem too, sure. It can be, yeah.
It's not on par with saying...
It's not on par with helping another Jew. Right, remember mitzvah has two meanings. Mitzvah means a commandment, and mitzvah means a good act. So it is a mitzvah, it is a good act. But it's not a mitzvah that you get rewarded for following the commandment of Hashem. Because anything that is a commandment of Hashem, it is a challenge for us. And because it's a challenge, we are rewarded for doing it, despite the difficulties. Something that is not a commandment is not a challenge. So if you do it, there may be some reward for it, for being kind to human beings. Being respectful of anybody is the right thing to do. You're not obligated, but it's good to do. You see somebody outside in the street and you can help him out, it's not a big deal for you. Why not? Give him $1 if he needs it for the bus, like he claims he does. A lot of them don't need it for the bus. They say they need to eat. Go buy them a sandwich. They won't want the food. Then you know they don't need it for food. So you can test them out. Right. Some of them don't need it. And this is a country, remember, where the government supports. There's welfare. So, I don't know if they all need it. But, with your own brother and sister, you may look into their situation. You're entitled to look into their situation, but don't overdo it. The last pasuk for tonight, that one we just did. Simcha tzaddik, asot mishpat u'mechita lepo'alei aven. It is a joy for a righteous man to do judgment, and a ruin for those who commit violence. Very unclear based on this translation. The simple translation means that it is a joy for a righteous man to do the right thing. The righteous man wants to do the right thing. He's happy to do the right thing. And it's a ruin for those who commit violence. Something good happens, the Rashaim don't like it. But the other interpretation, the commentaries explain, is it's talking about Yisurim. Mishpat means judgment, and when one is undergoing some form of pain and suffering, that is a mishpat on him. So the tzaddik is happy if something of a sort of pain or suffering is brought into his life. In a way, he's happy because it is a kapara. It atones for his sins. And he would rather it atone for him in this world than have to pay for it in the world to come. Mechita lepo'alei aven, it is a ruin for those who commit violence, or for those who are reshaim. Why? Because they don't learn. They don't see that all this pain and suffering is for their good, and therefore they don't correct their ways. So in a way they suffer in olam hazeh and in olam haba. And that is what one of the rabbis, one of the Tanaim, I think said to his students: be careful that you shouldn't lose your olam hazeh and your olam haba. As it is, your olam hazeh may be difficult, but if you rebel and you're not happy with your share and you complain, then you might not even get your olam haba properly. So when one sees that he's having a difficult time, or undergoing some painful moment, some suffering, some disease, illness, whatever it is, simcha tzaddik, if he's a righteous man, he understands that this is for his good, for his benefit, he should be happy with it. And according to the Kabbalah, whoever mekabel, whoever accepts the Yisurim be'ahava, then it is very effective, extremely effective in being mechaper. Aber mishe bo'et be'Yisurim, whoever kicks, rebels, does not accept, complains, then it's not effective. So chaval. In other words, that's what he says over here, umechita, it is the ruin lepoale avel, for those who commit evil, for the sinners, because here they're suffering and they're not getting anything out of it. That is why the rabbis tell us when something happens to us that we're very unsure of what it means, it's not a pleasant experience, it's painful, it's a monetary loss, whatever it may be, our attitude should be gamzula tova, kol man avad rachmani, kol man david rachmani lechav, whatever Hashem does is for the good. There's even a special beracha baruch dayan haemet. In other words, the blessed be the one who judges in truth, that we believe and completely rely and trust that everything that happens in the world, everything that happens to us, is completely and directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'ashgacha alyona be'ashgacha pratit, and is for our benefit. And the same to for the entire history of Am Yisrael. We're perplexed. We don't know what has happened. So much persecution, so much killings. We don't understand, but we know it's for the good. And when Mashiach comes, az yimales chok pinu l'shonenu rina, then our mouth will be filled with laughter, and we will be overjoyed, and we will realize that all along, all that Hashem meant was for our good. Bezat Hashem, we should see it very soon. Amen.